Hello everyone, welcome back to the Doctrine, Dogma, and Davide podcast. My name is Davide, and isn't it weird how all the miracles stopped happening as soon as things like cameras and modern science came around? If I had $1 for every time I've heard an atheist express that sentiment or other sentiments similar to it, I wouldn't need to ask you to consider supporting me on Patreon. But is this actually true? I mean, did the miracles stop or slow down? Are miracles just for the old church, just for the ancient church, and not for us here today? Now, of course, the answer is actually no. Miracles continue to happen to this very day. In fact, the more modern miracle claims, the more recent miracles that have been subjected to the scrutiny of modern science, were some of the most instrumental things that convinced me of the truth of the Catholic Church when I was trying to become an atheist in college. And I think that a fantastic case study of these Eucharistic miracles is the miracle that took place in Legnica, Poland in 2013. Because in Legnica, Poland, on December 25th in 2013, a consecrated host was dipped into the precious blood and then accidentally dropped onto the floor. The ordinary procedure when this happens is to either consume the host or to put it into water to dissolve. Now, because the host had fallen on the floor and had gotten dirty, the decision was made to fill the chalice with water and put the host into the water, and then they put the chalice into the tabernacle so that the host could dissolve. And of course, while the host was dissolving in the chalice, the tabernacle was kept locked as a matter of course to prevent people from being able to come in and desecrate the Eucharist. But after 11 days, on January 5th, 2014, the priest checked on the chalice to find that not only had the host not dissolved, but also there was a strange red splotch on the host. He took a picture of the host and contacted his bishop, who told him to continue to observe it. The priest continued to document the host as it dissolved, but the red splotch still did not. On January 26, 2014, an investigation committee that was appointed by the bishop, which included 3 priests and 1 cardiologist named Dr. Barbara Engel, took a sample from the host and sent it to Wroclaw Medical University and Pomeranian Medical University, which confirmed that they could not detect any sort of bacterial or fungal infections or contaminations that might explain the discoloration of the host. Following this initial investigation, on February 10th, 2014, the commission removed the remaining portion of the host from the water and placed it onto a cloth to dry. And 15 samples were taken and distributed to various universities who had agreed to examine the sample. Dr. Barbara Engel, the cardiologist on the investigation committee, described the process thus, quote, "The samples were taken by the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Wroclaw. The whole procedure was recorded, documented, and described. The scientists, when taking the samples, filmed and photographed everything. The collection of samples for analysis was done in an absolutely professional manner. Then the procedures carried out in the laboratories of this institute were in turn documented. Each sample has been properly isolated, described, packaged, transported, etc." So what did these universities find? Well, they found that the tissue was indeed human cardiac tissue, and that it showed signs of intense or extreme stress or agony prior to death. They further found that there was no natural explanation they could give as to how this tissue might have originated in the host, or how the tissue could have come to be at all. If you're interested, I've included a link to a copy of an excerpt of the report, which was translated into English. Unfortunately, the full report has not been translated into English. It's still in Polish, and so I wasn't able to get my hands on that. But of all of the scientific institutions that agreed to examine the specimen, only 2 of them ended up actually publishing any sort of findings that they had. Dr. Engel once again describes, quote, "In fact, not all the scientists and organizations that initially participated in this study agreed to give an opinion. Many withdrew, citing various reasons after learning the origin of this sample. In the end, 2 organizations issued a scientific opinion. These are the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Wroclaw and the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Szczecin." Once again, I apologize for any mispronunciations. I am not Polish, and Polish is hard to pronounce. When Dr. Engel was asked if the scientists who refused to write an opinion disputed any of the other scientific findings from the other universities, she replied, quote, "No, they agreed that it was myocardial tissue, but when they were told where this fragment came from, they refused to write an opinion." Now, this is really interesting to me because I've heard lots of atheists ask why the church doesn't allow skeptical scientists to examine their miracle claims. And of course, the answer to that is that the church does invite skeptics to examine their miracle claims. But oftentimes, the skeptics just aren't that interested in investigating them. the church at the end of the day is just not acting as a gatekeeper here. Because believe it or not, the church itself actually debunks more miracle claims than any atheist does. For instance, when the church investigated a miracle claim where a statue of Mary was allegedly crying tears of blood, it found upon investigation that the blood actually matched the DNA of a custodian of the church who had attempted to fake the miracle. The church investigates these claims because it doesn't want the faithful to get caught up in something that actually isn't miraculous, something that is actually a hoax or that has a natural explanation. The church wants to investigate to find out whether or not there is a way to debunk the miracle, which is why the church actually does invite scientists of every persuasion, skeptics and Christians alike, to come and examine the miracle, even if most of the time atheists refuse that invitation. Now, when I was trying to become an atheist and I looked at the evidence of miracles such as this, my simple response was, listen, I may not know exactly what happened in this case, but that doesn't justify an explanation that I know to be impossible. Namely, that bread does not turn into cardiac tissue. Even if all of the documentation and witness testimony and evidence makes the possibility of a hoax infinitesimally unlikely, that's still infinitely more probable than an explanation that I know to be impossible. But if it keeps happening, if these miracle claims keep coming up with the same sort of documentation and rigor, such as in 1997 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, such as in 2006 in Tixtla, Mexico, or in 2008 in Sokolka, Poland, I feel like there's only so many times that you can say, well, I don't know what did happen, but it can't be X. I felt like I could only say that so many times before I eventually had to consider the possibility that maybe there's something I'm missing here. And once you consider the miraculous explanation as a possibility, it very quickly becomes the most reasonable explanation. These miracle claims were instrumental in my inability to intellectually justify the materialist philosophy. And while nothing can convince someone who is determined to believe one thing or another, I praise God that these miracles were able to convince me. And I hope that after watching this video, if you're not Catholic, I hope that I at least gave you something to think about. And if you are Catholic, I hope that watching this video has helped to fortify your faith and has been spiritually fruitful for you. And if you want to support my ministry and my work, please consider going to my Patreon and subscribing for early access to all of my videos. And definitely go ahead and like, comment, and share this video with your friends. And I will see you all next time. God bless you.